Intro: Between Two Paths, Love and Betrayal. Dear soul, have you ever felt like your heart is a tiny boat stuck between two opposing currents? On one side is love, once warm like morning sunlight. On the other is fear, silent, cold, slowly pulling at your shoulders. You care for someone. You trust someone. Then one day, they place you in a cruel dilemma. To either keep your conscience intact or keep their affection. There's no shouting, no glass shattering, just a quiet afternoon when you suddenly realize even love can be used. And the ones who tear us apart the most are not strangers, but those we once held close. Chapter 1: The Servant in the Shadows. It was still dark. In the royal palace, a faint glow flickered from a clay oil lamp. In the back kitchen, a young servant girl, Lashika, was gently stirring a bowl of warm milk porridge. The scent of cardamom and rice drifted softly through the air, but her hands trembled slightly. Today was not like other days. Today there was something hidden beneath the sweetness, something no one should know. Lashika had served Queen Maya for over 5 years. She was the one who washed her clothes, prepared her meals, and quietly stood beside her when no one else remained. The queen never raised her voice. She never struck anyone. But in her silence, there was something that made people trust her without needing to ask why. Lashika had once been a child left by the river, forgotten by the world. It was Queen Maya who found her, wrapped her in a soft shawl, and whispered, "You are safe now." Since then, Lashika had never left her side. But this morning, this bowl of porridge carried a secret, a small packet handed to her by a guard at dawn. "Just pour it in," he said. "No one will know. Do this, and you will never be poor again." Lashika looked at the packet, then at the porridge, then at the golden spoon. Her breath hitched, because this wasn't just a spoon. It was the same spoon the queen had once used to feed her when she was sick. It still bore a small dent from that day, a mark of love, a mark of memory. And now she was being asked to use that very spoon to poison the woman who once saved her life. Outside, the palace birds had begun to stir. Light crept in through the bamboo blinds. But inside Lashika, there was only shadow. Not the kind that came from the absence of light, but the kind that comes from the presence of fear. Chapter 2: The Silver Spoon and the Choice No One Sees. The silver spoon gleamed faintly in the candlelight. Not polished, not new, but soft in the way that only time and love can make something soft. Lashika held it carefully, like holding a memory that now weighed heavier than any gold. The packet was still there, hidden in her apron. She hadn't poured it in. Not yet. Just do it. She'll never know. She's only a queen. You're just a servant. Voices whispered in her mind like a swarm of night insects. But another voice, quieter, lived in her heart. What do you owe to kindness? What is the price of a soul? Years ago, when no one looked her way, the queen had done something small, but unforgettable. She sat down beside a frightened little girl, brushed the dust off her forehead, and said, "You don't have to be afraid anymore." That single sentence had stitched together Lashika's broken heart, and it had stayed with her through cold nights, through hunger, through silence. Now, in the warmth of the kitchen, she was asked to betray that. She thought, if she did this, who would ever know? No one would suspect the quiet servant girl. The queen's death would be seen as fate, and Lashika would walk away with coin, comfort, and a future. But something deeper than fear rose in her chest, a kind of stillness. The stillness that comes just before a tear falls, just before a life changes. She looked again at the silver spoon. It no longer looked like an object. It looked like a crossroad. To stir the poison, or to stir her courage. A quiet sob escaped her throat. She wasn't crying because she was weak. She was crying because she could still feel, because the world hadn't stolen her softness. Not yet. Outside, footsteps approached. It was almost time to serve the queen her morning meal. And in that fragile moment, between breath and breath, Lashika made a choice. She would not be the hand that delivered betrayal. She would be the one who remembered, who chose conscience over survival, even if no one ever knew, even if it changed nothing, even if it cost her everything. Chapter 3: Silence, where love needs no words. The queen took the bowl of porridge without suspicion. Her eyes, tired yet gentle, met Lashika's for a brief moment, and that was enough. She didn't ask why Lashika's hands were cold. She didn't ask why her eyes looked damp. She just smiled. That smile, it wasn't grand or royal. It was the kind of smile that wraps a blanket around your fears. That says, I see you, even when you say nothing. Lashika stood by the window, quietly watching as the queen ate. Each spoonful felt like a test. Each second stretched longer than the last. But the queen was safe, because the spoon held only warmth, because the servant girl had chosen mercy. The silence between them was full, not empty. It was the silence of knowing, of unspoken gratitude, of love that has no need to prove itself. Lashika remembered the days when she used to chatter endlessly, trying to be seen, trying to be heard. But this moment, this silent room, was the loudest thing she had ever lived through. She didn't need the queen to praise her, didn't need a reward or recognition. She only needed to know that when tested, she didn't lose herself. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, bells rang in the distance. Morning rituals had begun. The world continued, unaware of what had almost happened, unaware of what had been saved, not just a life, but a truth. That sometimes the greatest acts of love are not shouted, not sung, not written in history books, but whispered between two hearts, in a moment no one else sees. And in that quiet, Lashika felt something soften inside her, like a knot slowly coming undone, like fear turning back into breath. Chapter 4: the final night and a light that does not fade. That night, the palace felt colder than usual. Candles burned lower. Voices in the hallway dropped to whispers. Rumors were moving like wind, silent, fast, and dangerous. Someone had betrayed the plan. The queen was supposed to fall ill. She was supposed to fade away, quietly, painlessly. But she didn't. And someone knew why. Lashika sat in her little room behind the kitchen, knees pulled to her chest, eyes fixed on the flickering shadow of her lamp. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She just waited. Not for someone to come, but for herself, to feel who she had become. There's a strange stillness that comes after you've made a choice that no one will ever thank you for. A kind of sacred loneliness, but also a quiet pride. That night she didn't sleep, not because of fear, but because her heart was learning how to stand taller. When dawn came, she heard footsteps outside. 3, then 4, then silence. The door creaked open. It wasn't a guard. It wasn't a threat. It was the queen, wrapped in a simple shawl, face pale from sleeplessness, but eyes clear, like the sky just before morning. She sat beside Lashika without a word. For a moment they just breathed the same air. And then, softly, the queen reached into her sleeve and placed a small silver pendant into Lashika's palm. Nothing fancy, just a circle with a carved lotus in the center. No speech, no reward. Only this: "You chose love," the queen whispered. "In a world that rewards silence, you chose to remember." Lashika didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat had become the sky, filled with rain she didn't yet know how to release. That morning the world did not change. No bells rang for her courage. No songs were sung. But a single servant girl walked out into the morning light, with her head held a little higher, carrying a quiet truth: that conscience is not something we wear for others. It is something we keep warm in the dark, for ourselves. Ending: when love isn't blind but brave. Dear soul, have you ever been in a moment like Lashika's, where no one sees what you're about to do, where the easiest path is silence, but something inside you whispers, "Don't forget who you are"? Sometimes love is not soft. Sometimes love is fierce. It chooses not what's easy but what's right. Even when no one claps, even when your hands shake. They say, good people get hurt the most. But maybe they also heal the world in the quietest ways. Lashika didn't become a heroine. She didn't rise to power. She simply remained human. And in a world that often rewards cruelty with crowns, perhaps being deeply human is the most sacred act of all. So if one day you're asked to betray yourself to be loved, may you remember this story. May you remember the silver spoon and the girl who chose to remember love instead of fearing the cost. If this story touched something quiet in your heart, know that you're not alone. Somewhere, someone else is also holding a spoon in silence, choosing between fear and love. If you're walking that path today, I hope this helped you breathe a little easier. And if you feel this story might comfort another soul, feel free to share it. Quiet healing often travels farther than we think.